Mythic Games has changed the deal again. They have altered the agreement. Pray they do not alter it any further. Though they couldn't because you're not getting your game. Well, you kind of are, but not the game you backed. We'll discuss. Okay, so this is going to be kind of an interesting video because there's a lot to talk about. There's obviously the facts about what was just announced for Hel the Last Saga and Anastyr, both previously by Mythic Games. But then there's more to talk about when it comes to reactions, expectations, crowdfunded. This is kind of a big subject, but I'm going to try and focus it pretty well for you guys here because obviously we've been through this ringer quite a bit. I think at this point, this is probably like my 6th video on this thing, but it just keeps changing. So it turns out the day I post an unboxing of 6 Siege, which happened a bit ago and just been scheduled out, is the day that they decide to like make this huge announcement that obviously I didn't know about at all. On the subject of the unboxing, just real quick, first of all, again, I did pay for a copy of 6 Siege. I did not pay the contribution to have it shipped to me. They said, hey, we're sending you this game. And I was like, okay. And so then they send it and I unbox it to show you guys kind of, hey, here's what it ended up being. Because I know a lot of you guys ain't going to get it. And so at least now you know what, if it was a thing or not or whatever. I guess it's on boats now to those that did pay the big ask for the contribution. But it was quite the big ask at the time. Yeah, it's just a messy situation. And the problem when you get into a situation like asking for more money is you can never make everybody happy, right? The moment you do that, there's going to be people that are upset, people that are okay, fine, whatever, and people that honestly don't mind at all. There's actually the big range of them. And you're going to keep having that range. You will never just make everybody happy now. It's impossible to do after a decision like that. And so no matter what Mythic Games does, there will be people upset. Just inherently, that's just how it is because it's a bad situation. That's real life, right? Real life is full of these situations that are inherently bad. There's nothing that can just be perfect about them. And this is kind of one of those. But this is something even different. This is something new. So they make this announcement, right? I finally read it now. Important announcement, the future of Hel. There's the same one on Anastyr. They're both about just as brief. And it's literally, this is it. This is the update right here. There is like 4 paragraphs here worth of content. And so it just says, hey guys, guess what? Hey, this, is huge and massive and it's going to be difficult to make. And it turns out that even with all of our changes and stuff, or, in terms of team budget, all that stuff, right? They would have to make a financial contribution. Not only that, but it would far exceed what they've been asking for other projects. And if you recall, it was like $150 or some junk like that for 6 Siege. It was a lot for the all-in. So what they're saying is essentially it would be even more than that. And that's because, and we're going to prove this later, you would be paying for the development of the game, not just the shipping. Right? I mean, obviously, this has been the case for a while. Obviously, this is not shipping costs. This is here we are supporting Hel to continue to make this game that you promised like forever ago, right? And that's the same thing here. And in fact, it's so big of an issue that we'll get to it. I'll tie back to that though, right? So they're saying, hey, when it comes to this is what's going on, right? But however, this is not all doom and gloom because essentially what they said is, hey, we can't deliver Hel. Right? That's what Mythic Games is saying. But they found another publisher that will be making an announcement that will actually publish Hel and will actually publish Anastyr asterisk. There is a huge big asterisk there in that it's not going to be the same game. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. That's all that is. So then you get this, a message from Come On with permission of Mythic Games. And that's for both Anastyr and Hel. I'm only showing you the Hel one to save some time, but they're pretty much the same thing anyway. And Mythic Games here just says, hey, we develop a lot of games. And as long as you don't look at one of their campaigns, they've all been fairly, well, I guess 2. There was the reselling of hate and stuff like that. That was like a big fiasco because they sold too much and had to make more in China and junk like that. And then, of course, there was Trudvang Legends, which wasn't up to snuff. And so they delayed it and then eventually delivered it. But again, it's one of those things where they did at least do it. And, when you get this much history, you're bound to make some mistakes, right? I mean, it's just inherently part of the thing. Like, think about like maybe your job, your career or whatever. If you're more than 10 years into it, or even 10 years into it, whatever it is, right? There's been a time where you've made a mistake, right? Where like you might be a huge, great employee, great achiever, great at what you do, whatever, great for the company, but you aren't 100% all the time. Nobody is, no company is as well. Come on, doing as many games as they've done, as many campaigns as they've done, have obviously messed up a time or two when it comes to deliver the games. I'm not talking like shipping issues and stuff like that. I'm just talking like actually making a game and delivering it. They tend to be pretty good on it. So, the challenging news. What the issue is here is that as they'll say on both of them, Hel the Last Saga and Anastyr are not ready for publication in their current state and will require substantial effort to complete them. Now, this is kind of twofold. This is partly why I said you're paying for Mythic Games, you know, or to complete Sixth Siege or complete Darkest Dungeon or whatever, right? To actually like design and finish the game, right? It's not finished. It's not ready for just production and shipping kind of thing, right? So, and I think it was pretty obvious in these two that obviously they were released at an early stage of development, and then it just kind of, languished as they got into issues here, obviously. But on top of that, when they talk about completing them, they're not just talking about completing what's currently there. They're talking about completing it as in making it and shipping it and delivering it. Because it's not very streamlined, right? I mean, Mythic Games makes games that are a lot different than Command games. And anybody who's played both types of games typically knows this. Mythic Games, I hate that every company has games in it, but whatever. They deliver stuff like Joan of Arc and this like crazy big, even Darkest Dungeon, these like really massive, sprawling games, right? Solomon Kane, same thing, right? That are just like really, really big. And then you have Command, which is almost the opposite, where they might have a lot of product. I won't even call it content, just product. But the actual game itself is very streamlined, very, run through. It's nothing like Joan of Arc, right? Or anything like that. Like A Song of Ice and Fire is probably about the closest they got to that. And that's pretty much more of a tabletop game than a game. So they will be essentially changing things, right? So the good news, sort of, is that if you backed them at any pledge level that actually got a game, in other words, not like a dollar donation kind of thing, right? You will get a free base copy of the new game. You'll have to pay for like that and stuff like that, of course. But essentially what that means is if you got the base game of Anastyr, you will be able, from Mythic Games, you'll be able to get the base game of Anastyr from Command or Hel the Last Saga. If you backed the all-in everything hundreds of dollars of Hel the Last Saga for Mythic Games, you will get the base copy of Hel the Last Saga for realsies this time, parentheses one kind of thing from Command. So it's not perfect at all. But it is something. And one thing they note here is that this is a gift from them, a gift from Command. This has nothing to do with a settlement on behalf of Mythic Games or anything like that. They're not involved at all with that. They're just saying, hey, we got this stuff. We're going to have to change a whole lot of it, but we will still get you guys a free base game if nothing else. That's if nothing else. Now, I don't know how that works if you want to get everything. Like if you're like, oh, this game from Command looks amazing and I want all of it and I want to back out like the high pledge level, but I earn a free base copy. So it's like, do you get the discount? Do you just get an extra one? I don't know how that works. That sounds kind of messy. That's the problem with these kind of things is logistically, it gets kind of a nightmare the moment you do something like this, because then everybody has questions and special circumstances and stuff like that. Now, there is a few things in an FAQ here. The big one here is the differences here, and I have this highlighted here. Essentially, what they're saying is that for Hel, they'll be focusing on the content on fewer but more robust stories. Right? So in other words, all the stories that Mythic Games is going to do, they're going to trim that down and just make the ones that are there like really, really good. Is essentially what they're trying to say here. The typical kind of difference between scope of a Command game and scope of a Mythic Games game, right? This is typically the difference this here. In other words, Mythic Games, obviously, now that we look at now, really liked to promise the like world but they couldn't really actually produce the world. It's why it never got produced, right? And what Come On is really good at is delivering games. So like, how about we just promise this and then just deliver this? Now, obviously, it's not nearly as really like awesome as the world, but you also get your game. So, it's like whatever there. Anastyr, same kind of thing. The development is concentrating on reducing the complexity found in the number of regions. So they're really just working on streamlining these games, reducing the scope of these games, probably when it comes to actual gameplay, not necessarily product, right? And again, I'm not saying content, I'm saying like you'll still be able to buy the dice packs and the neoprene mat and the bells and the whistles and the character packs and the 4 different expansion packs that each one will have, and all that kind of stuff, right? I mean, it's a Come On campaign. They know what they're doing, right? So you'll still have plenty of stuff, and probably throughout all of that, plenty of that. But you'll definitely, be paying for it differently. The big thing that they don't really list here is there is a drastic quality of component difference between Come On and Mythic Games. Mythic Games, honestly, is kind of top tier with their really nice, thick, stitched neoprene mats, with their very, very, very well done miniatures, right? With a lot of their content, they do very nice components. Very premium, very expensive. Again, hence the issue. Come On is really good at producing retail games and Kickstarter games that feel like retail games. And what I mean by that is the quality obviously isn't nearly as there as something like Mythic Games. Now, they've done a lot in some of these when it comes to like terrain and 3D, bases and stuff like that. But only on a few things. Otherwise, it's mostly just kind of like a texture, kind of like what Monolith does, which is obviously a lot cheaper to do. But Mythic Games, also their sculpt designs were often very multi-part, very detail-oriented in that, whereas Come On typically prints out 72 million survivors in a zombicide, each one being a single cast often, or maybe 2 pieces, stuff like that. Now, again, I don't know if which way they're gonna go in that, but I imagine they're going on the cheaper route. But again, that also means you actually get the game. It means it's actually sustainable. It means they don't charge a huge, ginormous amount. And if they do, they're making good profits so they can actually deliver your game and do stuff like that, right? I mean, it's kind of unfair to compare them to Mythic Games when Mythic Games has now proven that their model didn't work, right? So it sucks that it's going to be reduced scope. It sucks that people aren't going to get what they want. It sucks that the quality is going to go down. It sucks that these games won't play like the Mythic Games version of it, that they'll be more streamlined, more dense in scope, which some people like, some people won't. Depends on what you want. We all have different tastes. But it sucks that all those changes happen. But at the end of the day, it'll actually get delivered because it's from Come On and that's just what they do. And that's kind of nice, right? That is kind of good. The one thing I would say that's bad about this, and then we're going to get into some heavy stuff here, like social stuff. The one thing that really sucks here with all of this is that it prolongs it more, right? I mean, one of the things that was good-ish about some of the past companies that are no longer with us that did not make it through 2023, there were quite a few. Into 2022, but then also pretty much all of 2023. There was a lot of issues when it comes to companies essentially going out of business. But it's kind of like ripping off the Band-Aid in a way as well, right? I mean, at that point, it's just, hey, everybody lost their money, game's not being delivered, company's out of business, that's it. Business closed. Sucks. But then you kind of move on. Mythic Games trying to deliver these things and delivering them to some people that are willing and able to pay for it all, of course, has prolonged this so long. It's why I had an issue with the refunds, right? It's like a carrot at the end of the stick that you never get. It's like the hope that maybe someday you actually get something. So you, in your heart and in your mind, you don't just let go. You don't just say, well, lost my money on that one, and move on with your life. You get upset, you're angry, you curse them out, and you walk away or whatever, right? Instead, it's like this prolonged thing where they're still writing updates and they're still communicating and they're still doing changes and they're still asking for things. And every time it comes up, it's an issue. And then the more times it comes up, the worse it gets, right? The more money they're asking, the worse situation they're in, the more angry people are. It's like watching a car crash super slow-mo, right? Like, you know the car's going to crash. You don't know exactly when it's going to be over. You just know that it's taking way too long to do it. That's kind of where Mythic Games has been at for a long time, I feel. It's kind of where they're at now. Now, I do want to talk some social things, because I want to make sure that I cover this, because it's super duper important. If we scroll down here, you're going to see this comment here. At least when I get robbed at home, I can file a police report and an insurance claim. One thing I want to kind of point out here, and I know this is kind of a hot take. Just know that I paid for Hel. I paid for Anastyr, right? They still have hundreds of my dollars, and I will not get a product from that. I am right there with you guys in that regard. I literally am. They have my money, and I have no product. But at the same time, I do, at least for me, understand the difference between backing a crowdfunded campaign and having them screw the pooch, and having somebody break into my home and steal a possession of mine that I own. Because there is a difference there. That's funny. The comment made me laugh. It literally made me chuckle, because it's worded funny, right? Like I get a haha. But let's be clear here that nobody took anything from you when it comes to a product that you own. You never owned Hel. And sadly, you never will, of the Mythic Games variety. Or Anastyr, right? Or any game that you try and buy on crowdfunded, right? I mean, it sucks. It's not good. But it's not the same as somebody breaking into your home and stealing your possessions, right? I mean, it's not, it never has been, it never will be. So, obviously, make that clear. But more importantly, I was contacted by Leo, and he shared with me a police report. He shared with me a legal letter, and he shared with me a screenshot. So there's been some death threats, which boggles my mind that somebody would even casually mention the death of a human being because they didn't get a board game. I know they took your money. I get it. They took my money too. That's not death penalty stuff here. The amount of social issues within the board game industry that this kind of stuff brings up really irks me, because it shows a level of immaturity that I'm not okay with. Not only are we getting death threats, right? But then he was doxed. Somebody actually found his home address and posted it in the midst of all these angry comments. His home address. Now, I'm saying him. I'm not saying Mythic Games anymore. This is Leo. Leo has a wife. He has children. And somebody thought in their bright idea that amongst all these angry people and death threats that are happening, the already ridiculous level of immaturity that the board game industry is showing right now, that they would find his home address and post it for everybody to see. I don't understand how people can be like that. I really don't. By all means, be upset. By all means, don't like Mythic Games. By all means, shout out to everybody that will listen how bad of a company they are, how much you dislike the people running it. That's fine. But let's stop at the whole death threats to people's family. I don't think anybody should die because of this. That's just silly. That's just silly. And don't go around posting people's personal information. Come on, guys. Now, there is a question here around what's left, because there's still Monsterpocalypse. There's still Rise of the Necromancer. I wish I had an answer for you. I did reach out to Mythic Games to see what they said on it. And as of right now, there's not really a lot to say. This is all happening very, very quickly, obviously, right? I think they're going to kind of look at their options and look at the reaction and look at stuff like that. I guess the most I could say, and again, I don't know what their decision will be on this, but your reaction and how you act around this will determine, I think, whether or not they just throw in the towel on that, or whether they ask for contributions. There's no way they're delivering it, guys. I mean, like, let's be real. They're going to ask for money if they're doing it at all. But they might just say, you know what? The death threats, the doxing, my wife and kids being scared for their lives because I didn't deliver a board game, maybe I'm done. I could see that. I could understand that, honestly. I know if my wife and my kids got threatened because of the stuff on YouTube, I wouldn't post another video. You guys would never see me again. And you could thank those people for it. It's not worth it. This online stuff is just this, right? And so I could understand that. So yeah, I guess that's up for you guys to decide. And in a lot of ways, it's kind of finally in our hands, right? Like, we get to decide now what Mythic Games does. Do we want them just to file for bankruptcy and go away and never be seen again? And there's nobody gets Rise of the Necromancer and nobody gets Monsterpocalypse? Or do we want to keep doing what we've been doing, where they ask for a buttload of money that's unfair and then deliver it just to the people that are willing to pay them? There's not a good answer. There's not a perfect answer. There's not a right answer. I think the only right answer is don't threaten people's lives. I think that's probably the only right thing out of this. It sucks. It sucks that it got this way. If nothing else, if you're a developer and you're even still watching, the one piece of advice, and one thing we can all learn from this for sure, is take things seriously. And if there's a question about whether or not you can fund, the proper time to talk about it is right away. And don't promise things on a gamble, right? If you don't think you have enough money, enough income to deliver A, don't launch B on the hope that it'll go well, because eventually it doesn't. 100% of the time. You can't, it's just like that whole, like, oh, well, hey, in your work life, have you ever made a mistake? Well, of course you have, right? Same thing. Like, if you're constantly trying to be perfect and at some point you're not. For Mythic Games, it was Anastyr, right? For many other games, it was, companies, it was a wide variety of them, but eventually they all hit it. And at the end of the day, you're dealing with people's money, and you should respect that, and respect it enough not to gamble it, which is what launching another campaign is. The only other thing I think to learn from this is scope. When it comes to just how big of a game you're promising, how big of a game you're making. All of these could have been multiple campaigns, right? Half of this, and then deliver that half, and then launch another campaign for the next half. But so often, people are focused on the numbers, like the numbers that are on Kickstarter, you know, how much is funded, and they want it as big as possible. So they offer as much product as possible and as big of a game as possible, because that's acumen, that's fame, that's traction, right? That's the sexy big number. But that doesn't actually matter. It's just like focusing on subscribers versus views. It doesn't matter how many people subscribe to your YouTube channel if nobody watches it, right? What matters is that you're creating content that people want to enjoy. Now, hopefully they enjoyed enough to subscribe, but maybe they won't, maybe they won't. It doesn't matter if they're watching. It doesn't matter. But it's that big, sexy, attractive number that everybody focuses on, even if it kills the rest of the stuff for it. The same thing with these games and these crowdfunding games. So people are so focused on breaking that $1 million, breaking that $2 million, that $5 million, that $10 million threshold. It's ridiculous. And they're just killing their own industry. I've seen companies do it all the time in many different industries. It happens all the time. They get greedy, they want more, and they're not willing to wait for it. If they had just done half of the scope that they were trying to do, they could have done this. But they didn't. And so they promised the world and delivered nothing. And that's kind of where we're at. I think that's it. I mean, you could talk about this till, you run out of breath, or your fingers get tired of typing. Go ahead and let me know your thoughts down below. Again, don't tie your fingers out. At the end of the day, there's more to the world than this, more to your life than this. But I would love to hear your thoughts on this. People have talked about, if they had just said, we're just not going to produce this, right, to reduce costs, and not do this expansion or something like that. But again, there's no easy solution. You will upset somebody. So for somebody, that's the only reason they backed. I guarantee it. And now you're not making it, so they're upset, right? You're going to upset people no matter what. But was there a better answer? After the fact, I'm not so sure. Before the fact, definitely. Anyway, that's all I have, guys. Let me know your thoughts below. Of course, I would love to hear what you guys are thinking, because at the end of the day, you guys are their backers and other companies' future backers. What you think about matters. So I'd love to know your thoughts on this. Guys, thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day. I'll talk to you guys again real soon with a more uplifting news video, some unboxings, top 10 stuff like that. Stay tuned for all that, of course. So guys, thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day. Take care. Bye, guys.